Fiwe. Bwana sifiwe tena. I just want to begin by saying thank you to this church and this community and to the board and the pastor for such a warm welcome. As he said, we have been a part of this church for quite a long time, but just because of the nature of the work that I've been doing, we're in and out. I think our first time visiting this church, we were university students in the U.S., and we came on a missions trip in 2002. And we were in this worship space with Brother List. And then in 2008, when we moved to Kenya, we started visiting when we were able. And in 2010, our daughter Sophie was actually dedicated here in this space by Pastor Ron and Brother List. And so we have a very special place in our hearts for this church, for this community, for this congregation, the way that you shine the light of Christ so brightly. Day in and day out. We are grateful for you. I do want to say, I'm afraid our brother misled you just a little bit, because he said we have something very, 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 very special coming. And he said so many varies, I found myself wondering, I wonder what it will be. And then I realized he was talking about me, and so that was too many varies. So, but we are this one is not too much. We are very, 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 very excited to be with you today. Okay. I also want to say thank you to the incredible praise and worship. Can we give them one more hand? Thank you for using your talents and your giftings, your incredible musical ability to honor and praise and lead others in praise and worship. It's a blessing. I pray that he covers you as you do this, all the places that he leads you. Thank you. I'm so grateful we were able to be a part of this morning. And when I first walked in and I saw you on stage, I thought, I'm color coordinated. Maybe I should go up. No, it would have not been as good if I had come on stage. As Pastor said, we have been living here in Kenya since 2008. I've been working as the regional coordinator for People to People Ministries. It's the humanitarian and development arm of World Missions of the International Pentecostal Holiness Church. Through that time, my wife has also been working as the director of, I always get the title wrong, Marketing, Communications, Admissions. Nope, not, what is it? I said those words. Okay. The Director of Communications and Admissions. I think there's some marketing in there. At Roslyn Academy, it's an international school. Years ago, I taught there, but I've been doing full-time missions work since, around 2008. And then recently, well, not so recently, 5 or 6 years ago, I accepted a part-time role there as the Director of Service Learning, coordinating experiential missions trips for the students and staff there. And then just in May, Brother Ron approached me and Bishop Talmadge Gardner approached me about taking on the regional director position, and I felt very strongly that my answer was no. Because Mike and I have always argued back and forth, when Ron leaves, it's going to be you. And he's like, no, it's going to be... And then we agreed it was going to be Brother Kevin Sneed. And then he left. And so I prayerfully considered, and after, honestly, I'm grateful for Pastor Ron. If it hadn't been for him, I don't think God would have led me here, but he encouraged me, and he built me up, and he invested. And so I agreed. I would ask for your prayers, as I am looking now at, we'll still be doing the People to People East Africa coordinator, working with incredible ministries and churches across East Africa in humanitarian relief, disaster relief, child sponsorship, feeding programs, the ministries of our church that reach out into the community. We have incredible work going on throughout East Africa through it, amazing leaders and church members in these 8 countries that we have the opportunity to partner with. I'll still be doing the service learning at Roslyn and now the regional director. It's a few different hats, and so pray that I know which hat to put on at the right time, and that I hopefully can find a way to integrate those hats. And if down the road, God will just give us very clear wisdom on where we need to be and what we need to be invested in. But I'm very excited to be in this role. To be honest, I wrestle a little bit with the title regional director. I like much more the idea of regional partner, because the way that we've been ministering since 2008, we are honored to be able to come alongside existing ministries that are doing incredible work for the kingdom, and we get to partner with them. How can we come alongside to see the kingdom of God grow and flourish through our churches and our communities and our relationships? We have 1,800 churches in East Africa that we partner with. So I think the official title is regional director, but we're partners, working together, leading one another, guiding one another, learning from one another. That's something I tell Roslyn students every time I'm taking them out. We are going to partner with and learn from the local community. And so that's the heart of our ministry and for this role. So thank you for taking this time to welcome us and invite us. I did prepare, the reason I said I won't need the pulpit is because I did prepare a sermon today, and it was entitled Service as an Act of Worship, because I knew that we were having our time of worship today, but I kind of felt led a little different direction, and this is very much outside of the normal Sunday morning service, so I hope this is okay. If not, I guess, I won't be coming back again. Well, no, I'll be coming back again. I'll just be coming back out there. I won't be up here. But I just felt led, if it's okay with you, to tell you a story this morning. I think God speaks powerfully through his word and through scripture and through sermons. I also think that he reveals himself very clearly through our experiences and our stories. And so I want to share a story with you this morning. And the reason I do is because as this worship team was up here leading us, I found myself reflecting on, it is often so easy for us to enter into a place of worship, to enter into a place of praise when we are in an incredible space like this, led by incredibly gifted worship leaders, when everyone around us is like-minded. We are here to seek the face of God. But how do we take this sense of worship, this posture of worship and praise, how do we take that when we leave? How do we find that when we are in our workplace tomorrow and we are the only Christ follower in the room? How do we find that when we are in a situation? I'm sure if we went through this room, there are some of us that are currently on mountaintops. Life is going well. And there are some of us that are in valleys. We are struggling. We are suffering things that others may not even know. How do we find a sense of worship, an awareness of God in those moments? Because it's very easy to be aware of God's presence this morning. They did a beautiful job ushering us in. How do we go with that? And so I want to tell you a story. And this happened around 10 years ago. It was 2017. We had been in a season, my family and I, a very stressful season. How many of you ever get to those points in life where things are so good, you're so busy, but you just find that your tank is becoming more and more empty? Like in the vehicle, the light is on. The reminder is saying, you need to get fuel soon. Well, we had entered this season. We hadn't been back to the States in about 2.5 years. The ministry was going well, the work was going well, but we were on empty. And then I knew we had, in a few months, a trip to the U.S. coming up. And I looked ahead, and I was realizing when we get to the U.S., we will be there for 10 weeks. And I'll be speaking in 12 churches in 10 weeks. And we have so many meetings and then time with family. How am I going to be full there when I'm empty here? And so we realized we need just it's what one of my favorite writers calls this liminal space. We need this space in between our ministry here and our ministry there to just recharge. And so we always, when we fly back to the U.S., we go through somewhere in Europe. It's a long flight. And so our flights were booked through the UK. And I was like, what if when we land in the UK, instead of flying out 6 hours later, what if we fly out a week and 6 hours later? And we just have some time as a family to recharge. And I had been doing at that time a lot of studying about early church history, and I had come across the early Celtic church, so the Christian church that was kind of in this part of the world, Ireland, Scotland, the UK. And I had read about this island called Iona. and it's off the western coast of Scotland. And you have the western coast of Scotland, and then you have an island called the Isle of Mull. And then off the coast of the Isle of Mull, you have this tiny little island called Iona. It is around 3 kilometers wide and about 6 kilometers long. Very small. And this island is the place where the early Irish Christian monk, Saint Columba, when he came from Ireland, he landed on this tiny little piece of land. And he felt like this is where God was calling him to start a Christian ministry. And so he planted a monastery and he planted Christian works. And then from there, the gospel began to spread throughout UK and different parts of Europe. And so I thought to myself, this is what I need. We need to if we can just get on this little island, a place that Christians have been going to for pilgrimage and for retreat for 1,500 years. We just need to hear waves and to climb mountains and to sit on rocks and just take a breath. And so we made our plan. We're going to do this on our way. It's just going to be a time, the 4 of us, off the grid, in this remote place, making space and time for God. And so we get to the week that we're going to be departing, and the Sunday before, we were at a church in Tagoni, and I was speaking that day. And then on our way from the church, we were on this dirt road, and we hit a patch of soil where they had redone the road, and the soil was very loose. And when we hit it, where it looked like there was road, it was loose. And so we hit it, and we roll our car, damage our car, no serious injuries, but you know how sometimes they say when it rains, it pours? Like we're already feeling empty, and now we've wrecked our vehicle, and we're kind of sore and not feeling great. And I just thought, it's okay. Through this week, we're going to have that time to recharge. And then we're flying out on a Friday. And on that Thursday, it's actually, we have all these events going on. And my wife calls me, I'm in the hospital. I'm experiencing this terrible pain in my side. I don't know what's happening. One of our friends picked her and took her. And so I rushed to Aga Khan, and we find out that she is struggling with gallstones. I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with it, but she's got gallstones, and the surgeon is finding a way to give her some relief from the pain, terrible pain. She spends about 12 hours in the hospital. They finally realize what the issue is. They're able to sort her. And as they passed, I asked the doctor, I said, okay, well, we're traveling tomorrow. We have this flight. I guess we should cancel and postpone. And he said, no, she's going to need to have this removed. But for now, it's episodic. Like it may hit, it may not. You just want to be aware of where the hospitals are, where you are. I'm like, okay, great. So I did my research and I looked, and we're going to be, okay, we'll be here. This is the closest hospital. We'll be here. This is the closest hospital. And then I get to the Iona part. And I'm like, whew, there are no hospitals. We are on this island that is a 20-minute boat ride to this island, which is an hour-and-a-half drive to get on a boat, which is a 45-minute boat ride to this western coast, where there's a 15-minute drive to a hospital. And I said, this seems very risky. And I asked Jess, and she said, no, usually when it happens, we have time. There are several days, so I think we still try. Like, I think we go for this. And so we decided we're going to do this. And so we get to Iona. We have a day that was exactly what I had been praying for. We spent time in this 15th century abbey that was built 500 years ago, praying in a room where people have been praying for 500 years. We had time. We walked down to the southern end of the island. It's called St. Columba's Bay because it's where that original Irish man landed. We spend time down there, just the family of 4, the ocean, the rocks. They have these beautiful stones on this beach called Highland marble. They're like a green marble because they're these on the eastern side of the island. There's these caves with this stone. And the way the tide works, it goes in, it breaks off. This happens over decades and centuries. It breaks off small pieces of the stone, takes them out to the sea, and then the tide brings them back in, polished, and deposits them on this bay. They actually call them mermaid tears because they're green and shiny. So we're on this bay. Of course, my daughter Sophie was 7 at the time. She spends all day finding mermaid tears. My son Ethan was 5. He spent all day jumping on wet rocks, getting his shoes wet. As you as parents know, how many times do we say, don't get your shoes wet? But it was a great, beautiful day. Just being and seeking God's peace and rest and grace. At one point that day, the highest point on the island is it's a hill, a big kind of mountain hill called Dun E. And then I learned that my name, Dunning, it comes from the Gaelic, which means Dun means a hill. And so Dun E is the hill of Iona, the hill of E. And so I thought, I've got to go anytime I'm anywhere, the way I connect with God, I climb to the highest place. I've been up Mount Kenya 4 times. If I see a mountain, the first thing my brain says is, how do I get on top of that? And so I had spent some time up on Dun E, praying, reflecting. As we went back to our place that night that we were staying in, I remember walking along the road. The sun was setting over the ocean. I distinctly remember being at the most peaceful, joyful, hopeful that I had been in years. I would even say, like, when I think of that moment of realization, with a pocket full of mermaid tears that my daughter had collected, I remember thinking to myself, thank you, God. This is what we needed. I feel full. I can go to the U.S. and speak in churches and meet with people. Thank you. This is what we needed. And then we get back to the place where we're staying. This is still a point of a little bit of contention with my wife and I, because we were traveling and we're good missionaries. I said, well, if we're going to do this, we still need to do it as affordably as possible. So instead of staying in one of the nice hotels, I convinced her that we should stay in the backpackers hostel, where all the university kids stay. And I said, we're just sleeping there, it will be fine. And it was fine. It was fine. It was fine. And so I would say it's a nice place for very little money. And so we get back to the backpackers hostel, and we're sharing a washroom with university students, but we have our own room. And in the room we have bunk beds, so there's 2 and 2. And so we get in, we settle for the night. Again, I laid in bed that night, and all I could think was, thank you. Thank you, God. You met me exactly where we were. I am so grateful. And then I went to sleep. And then about an hour later, I was jolted awake because I heard what sounded like a scream, and then I heard a crash. And I laid there for a second because I am the typical male father. I don't want to speak for any others, but the way my brain works is it can be a little slow. So I laid there and I thought, what did I hear? What was that? It sounded like a scream and then a crash. Maybe I should check. So I go down of course we put the children on the bottom and me and Jess were on the top. So I go down the ladder and I turn on the light and I see Jessica sitting on the floor. And then I say, well, my brain finally caught up. Well, Ethan at that time would always wake up with these bad dreams. He wouldn't actually wake up. He would just scream and you would have to go and say, it's okay, it's okay. So I was expecting to find him, but he's still peacefully asleep, like nothing has happened. Jessica's on the floor, and I'm very confused. What is happening? Why are you on the floor? What is going on? And this part of the story is her story. So do you mind maybe just telling briefly what happened here? Yeah.
Do you have those things in your life that you just want to erase from your memory? You never want to think about them again? This is one of those. But I will say this. So what happened? Ethan screamed. I jumped up, as I usually do, and forgetting that I was on a top bunk. A very, very high top bunk, like unusually high top bunk. So I'm on top. And I jump up like I'm on just a normal bed. My feet are supposed to hit the ground. My feet did not hit the ground. I fell on what I can remember, I fell on my knees first. My upper body went forward, my face hit the rung of the bunk that was on the other side, knocking out my 2 front teeth, which are a very pivotal part of who we are. So do you ever have those moments where you're like, this is a nightmare? Can I just wake up? Can I just wake up? Come on, I just need to wake up. I wasn't waking up because this was a very real thing that was happening. And as I reflect on it, I don't want to belabor that point too much. I don't like I said, I don't like to think about it. How many of you have those moments that you can reflect on that it was a nightmare that you were hoping you were just gonna wake up from? So as Jamie talks about how God showed up in this moment, I want you to put yourself in the story. What are those things where you just hoped, God, let me just wake up from this nightmare? We've had the opportunity this week to lead worship, one song in particular called Abide. And there is a line in that song that says, God, be my strength, my song in the night. It was literally nighttime, but you know those dark night of the soul moments. And I needed God to be our strength in that moment. We needed him to show up.
And so I see her on the floor. She tells me, I've knocked my teeth out. I've knocked my teeth out. Now, again, just to go back, mother hears a scream, jumps out, crashes. Father, scream, crash. What's going on? Her reaction time was so quick that her crash is what made me actually wake up. So thank God for mothers with very quick responses and instincts. And so she told me that had happened, and I said, I'm sure that's not, let me see. And then, yes. And so we quickly started doing some research. What do we do? Her 2 front teeth had been knocked out. And so, of course, the medical advice is, if you can find them, hold on to them. If you can put them back where they belong, do that. If not, keep them in the cheek. Get to a doctor as soon as possible, within a few hours, if you want to save the teeth. Because she's incredibly strong. She was able to put the teeth back where they belong. We think it could have been the wrong way around. We don't know. No. She was able to get them back. And then she's obviously in shock. I start thinking through, okay, this says we need to get to the doctor within 3 hours. It's 1:30 in the morning. I know that we're not scheduled to leave on that first boat until 10 o'clock the next morning, and then it's an hour and 15-minute drive, and then it's a 45-minute boat, and then there's no way we can get there within 12 hours. And I read, what happens if we can't get there in 12 hours? You lose the teeth. So then I think, well, I know there's an earlier ferry. Maybe we could get on that boat at 7 and then drive across the island, and then there's another one at 10 that would put us there about 11. Again, 10 hours, not fast enough. So I go over to the owner of the hostel. He lives in a nice house beside it, which probably should have noticed. If the owner doesn't want to stay there, maybe. So I knock on his door. Now again, 1:30 in the morning. We're on this remote island. It's May, but it's so cold. The northern wind that's coming across that island. It's dark, it's cold. I knock on the door. 1:30 in the morning. This man, his name is John, older gentleman. He opens the door, which already I'm like, he has no idea who's knocking on his door. He opens it at 1:30. He invites me inside. I tell him about what's happening. We sit down at his kitchen table, and he starts, what can we do? How can we fix this? And he comes up with this idea. He said, actually, there's a boat that leaves here at 7, but the first boat from the other side of the Isle of Mull, there's actually one that leaves at 6. So if we can get you over earlier, maybe you could get there by 6. he said, I have a small fishing boat. It's a small aluminum fishing boat. He said, it's very dangerous crossing this part of the ocean because of the channel. He said, but if you trust me, as soon as there's a little bit of light in the sky, I need light because of the rocks. He's like, but if there's enough light in the sky, I can take you at 4:30. And so I go and I talk to Jess, and we think, yeah, this is our only choice. We have to try this. And so at 4:30, we're going to meet him, and there's just a sliver of light in the sky, but he says it's enough. And so the children are asleep. They have no idea that any of this has happened. So I'm like, okay, I need to wake them up. How am I going to explain to them that it's 4:30 in the morning and we're leaving suddenly? So at the time, Sophie was 7. I appeal to her very sensitive, caring, nurturing nature, and I wake her up and I say, Sophie, Mom has had a bad accident. We have to go. And she says, Mom's hurt. Let's go. Great. And then Ethan is a 5-year-old boy. I appeal to exactly who he was at the time, and I say, Ethan, do you want to ride a boat? And he's up. So they're ready to go. 4:30. It's cold. It's windy. The sky is still dark, but there's a sliver of light across the sky. And this gentleman, John, meets us. We get in the boat. We're going across very rough ocean. I'm trusting. We're completely putting our trust in this man as he guides us across. And I have this moment where the sky, the horizon, just starts to change colors and shift. And it starts with a pink, and then it's purple and orange, and you can slowly see the light coming. And in that moment, and I don't want to, overly emphasize that what was going on, but it was like God spoke to us and said, even in the darkest moment, the sun will rise. Trust in me. And I took a breath. We get over to the other side of the island. We get our car and we drive. And I know that I have an hour and 15-minute drive, and I need to do it in an hour. So I'm like, okay, I am a Kenyan driver. We can do this. Yeah? So I start rushing across the island because I'm also very nervous that in this part of the world, in especially those May, June, July months, the only way people can move about the islands is through these ferry boat systems. And I know that this time of year they get full very quick, and you have to reserve months in advance. And so I know we don't have a booking on this 6:00 boat. What if we can't get on? So I'm driving as quickly as I can on these windy roads through this island, and I come around a bend, and right in the middle of the road is a Highland stag deer. Huge deer, massive antlers, just standing in the middle of the road. And so I slam on brakes, and he's standing there, and the rest of the herd is walking behind him. The sun is rising just behind him. And we had a moment, in reality, it was probably 3 seconds. But for me in that moment, for at least 30 seconds, that deer locked eyes with me, and I am not making this up, and just looked at me. And I looked at him, and I couldn't go, and so I had to stop. And I took a deep breath, and it was like through the eyes of that deer, God said, slow down, take a breath, it's going to be okay. And after that shared moment of 3 seconds or 30 seconds, however long it was, the deer walked on, and then I continued in a little more sensible pace. We get to the ferry terminal, and I'm ready. My instincts of protection are kicked in, and I'm telling myself there is no way that this person is not allowing us on this boat. I know we don't have a booking. I know we haven't paid. They're going to let me on. So I go into the office, and what did a lot of people these days on social media call it? A Karen? Is that right? I was like, listen to me. My wife is injured. I have to get on this boat. You cannot deny me. We have to be over there. And the lady says, hey, it's fine. We had a cancellation. There's plenty of room. And I'm like, you bet yourself there is. Yes. But no, I was like, thank you so much. I'm so sorry for my... So we get on the boat, a cancellation. There was a spot for us. And we make our way across. We get in the town of Oban on the mainland at 7 a.m. Remember, the earliest I thought we could get there was 12. We drive 10, 15 minutes to the nearest hospital, a hospital that just happens to have an orthodontist specialist surgeon. So we walk in, and I'm walking to the office, and I tell the lady what's going on, and she said, I'm so sorry. I don't remember the day of the week. Maybe it was Tuesday. For some reason, I'm thinking Tuesday. She said, I'm sorry, on this day, our doctor doesn't come in till noon. And I literally collapsed on the counter. I'm like, what are we going to do? And as I'm asking that question, I hear her say, Dr. Smith? It wasn't his name. I can't remember his name. And I turn around, and there's a doctor walking in. And she's like, what are you doing here so early? And he said, I just felt like I should come in early and get caught up on some things. And she said, well, I'm glad you're here. We have an emergency. He immediately took Jessica. They went back to the office. By 7:15, she was in the chair of a specialist. And so as she is going through that process, I'm outside with the kids. There was a hill nearby. They're doing what kids do. They're rolling down the hill and running and rolling down the hill. And my heart was pounding. I'm so nervous. What is going to happen? What is he going to say? And so after about an hour and a half, he comes out and he says, good news, it looks like we were able to save them. He said, I've got them cemented in place. You're going to have to see someone in about 3 weeks' time, but for now, there's nothing we can do. We have cemented. We've done everything possible. We trust and pray that it's going to be okay. So I go to the counter and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. I don't know how familiar you all are with the state of medical coverage in the U.S., but it is insanely expensive. So I know this is going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And so I go up and I get my card out and I'm just like, and then the lady said, what is this for? And I said, I need to pay for the services. And she laughed. She goes, that's right, you're American. She said, in the UK, this is covered. You don't owe anything. Now, 3 weeks later, we were in the chair in the U.S., and they caught up to us. They caught up to us there, and then Jessica also had to deal with the issue we thought would be a problem, have her gallbladder removed. The U.S. healthcare system, they caught us. But even in that, God provided. And so I talked to Jess, I'm like, okay, we still have 3 days before our flight. Let's just go back, change our flights, get home. And she said, no, there's nothing that can be done. I think more than ever, we just need some time. And so she decided that we would continue on, and so we get in our car, and we're driving that day, driving through the Scottish Highlands, beautiful country. I remember there was one moment that I was kind of getting a little heavy-eyed, and so we pulled off at the ruins of a 500-year-old castle on the edge of a river. We found a beautiful piece of grass under a tree and napped by the river while our kids pretended to be knights and princesses in the castle ruins. Beautiful moment of hearing them laugh and play, of hearing the river run. Later that day, we came along Loch Ness. I listened in the back seat as the kids are laughing and playing and trying to find the Loch Ness monster as they look into the lake. It ended up being this beautiful moment. And the reason I wanted to share that story is because throughout that tragic, horrific moment, God continued to make himself known to us. It's not always easy for us to see how God is at work. It's not always easy for us to be aware of God's presence. It's not always easy for us to go through life in a state of praise and worship. But that doesn't mean that God is not constantly at work on our behalf. Because that day, in the midst of tragedy on a tiny island off the coast of an island, which is off the coast of Scotland, God revealed himself to us. He revealed himself through the kindness of a man named John, who was willing to get up in the middle of the night, lead a dangerous boat journey across the ocean just to help a stranger. God came to us through the beauty of that sunset as he reminded us that the sun rises even in the darkest moments. He came to us through the eyes of that deer that said, pause, you're okay. He came to us through the kindness of that woman that, despite me being way too aggressive, was patient and calm. And there was space where there shouldn't have been space. He came to us through a doctor that, for whatever reason, felt something in him say, I should go into the office 4.5 hours early today. He came to us that day through the sounds of a river as we tried to get a little bit of sleep before continuing our drive. He came to us through the laughter of our children and the joy that they had, that even in the midst of tragedy, they still found joy and pretending to play in castle ruins and pretending to look for the Loch Ness Monster. God revealed himself to us in every moment. And so what I want to encourage and leave with each of us today is that God is at work within and around us in every moment of every day. We just have to pause and be aware of how he is at work and of what he is doing. Because when we do that, it allows us to approach life with a spirit of worship and praise. Because even if we are in the midst of suffering and tragedy, we know that God is there. Even if we are at a place where everyone around us does not follow Jesus in the way that we do, does not understand why we live our lives the way we do, God is there. He is among us. So I can live a life of worship because I am aware of how God is moving within the situation right now. The early church, there was not extremely early, but there was a leader, a Christian leader named St. Ignatius, and he often talked about that we should seek to be, as followers of Jesus, contemplatives in action. It's kind of taking that biblical principle of praying without ceasing. At all times, he said, we should be in action. We should be in the world. We should be doing our work. We should be serving in the way that we can. We should be living our lives, but we should always be contemplating the goodness of God. We should always be aware of how God is at work and what he is doing in our lives. It's not always easy. But if we take time to pause, take a breath, and look for where God is moving, we will find him in the moments of tragedy, in the moments of goodness. I'm sorry, I'm going to look. There's as I end. Yeah, so there's a passage from Romans 1:20. It says, the eternal power and divine nature of God could clearly be seen in all that he has made. We can see God, and he can speak to us through what he has made, what he has done, who he has created. He gives us reminders of who he is. It says the eternal power and divine nature of God is clearly seen in the things he has made. The psalmist shares a parallel truth when he says, the heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day, they continue to speak. Night after night, they make him known. God is constantly making himself present to us. From those early Celtic Christians that started that work in Iona, there's a prayer. And in that prayer, it says, God, lighten my understanding of your presence within and around me. Another way to say that is, God, heighten my awareness of your presence within and around me. Help me to see how you are at work. Help me not just to see the colors of a sky in this moment of tragedy. Help me to be reminded that you are the source of light that is always shining and can never be diminished. So as I close, that is my prayer for each of you, for myself. I felt led to do a sermon a little differently this morning. But my encouragement for each of us is let us find time to seek God every day, to see how he is moving, how he is at work, to heighten our awareness, to lighten our understanding, so that we can live lives of worship. That we don't just worship in this space, we prioritize worshiping in this space, but then we take that worship with us. We live lives of worship. Amen. Again, thank you so much for guiding us and leading us this morning. I want God to continue to bless your ministry. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and you are doing good work. And for each of you this week, may you see God at work, regardless of your circumstances. Asante sana na Mungu akubariki sana. Amen.